Welcome back to the Laravel Creator Series. Today we're here with Caen, who is uh, known on Twitter and the other socials as Code with Caen, creator of HydePHP and many other things. So welcome to the show, Caen.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
I love it, love it. And just so everyone knows, you're located in Sweden, and that's
Yep,
correct, right?
correctly. Southern
Sweet.
Sweden, pretty close to Copenhagen.
Oh, nice. I love it. And so your project that you just recently launched, well, I say recently, I mean, I think it's been what, 6 months now, maybe three, four,
Type
is
PHP?
yeah, Hyde PHP.
Oh, that's been out for about 2 years, but it's only
Oh,
gotten traction the past for 6 months. Yeah.
okay. Well, there you go.
Um,
It shows you build it and eventually they will come, right?
yep, exactly.
So, tell us kind of like a little overview of Hyde PHP.
So basically, HydePHP is a Laravel-based static site generator, and I know there are a lot of those, or a few Laravel-based ones already, and there are quite a few static site generators. So when I set out to create HydePHP, I wanted something that was dead simple to get started with, really easy to use, but still have the full power of Laravel when you need it. So that's what I tried to do, and it seems like people think I did a very job at it. So yeah, it's a console application. You run through the command line just like any other one. But behind you, you really have pretty much most things that Laravel has to offer, except for the like really dynamic stuff that changes on each request. But we have blade views, you have artisan commands, most packages work as well if you have a UI kit and stuff like that. So I really try to make the developer experience as great as possible. Um, but yeah, Laravel-based static site generator is a pretty short descriptor for it.
I like it. I like it. So it's just to sort of be clear, it generates static files, or it still is basically like a Laravel app running on a server. How do
No,
you
um, it generates static files. So you feed in, you have a project with like Markdown content or Blade files, and Hide compiles it to static HTML. That you can just deploy. So it's not intended to be run through a web server. However, we do ship with a development web server for like developing it. But the rest is just static, generated in the console in milliseconds per page.
gotcha? That's pretty sweet. And then so I guess the benefit with that, you can just hold on, I'm getting my browser here. You can just sort of deploy it anywhere, right? Like
Yeah,
pretty it's pretty flexible as far as all that goes.
and
Um,
cheap.
and
You can
yeah,
host it for
very
free.
very cheap. I guess my question, could you say you have a Laravel app already and you want to add a blog to it or something? Could you generate with Hide the static files and somehow just have your other like integrated with your other Laravel app? I don't know, like in the
Yeah.
public directory. I guess that might work.
Exactly. This is a question I've been asked a lot, and there are a few different ways depending on how standalone you want the integration to be. You could just deploy it, like have Hide compile to the public directory. That's one way. Really easy and have it standalone. Another thing you can do is to build a controller that routes stuff to the generated files. Or if you want to get really fancy, most of the source code for HydePHP is in the framework package that you can require through a Laravel project. And you will still need to do some tinkering to configure it into the service container and stuff like that. But once you have that, you can just render a HydePHP page from the controller and tie it in and do use all of the fancy stuff while still being in the full dynamic Laravel context. So that is something you can do and make very cool stuff with.
That's awesome. Yes, and you know, as I was looking at the project, I know you do the sort of the standard Markdown files. You know, you have the front matter, I think it's called, and
Yeah,
then you know with the titles and all that stuff. And then basically it's just a Markdown page after that, right? It just kind of reads
yeah,
everything and sinks it in. Um,
exactly.
so I assume you're using this yourself.
Yeah.
What This is sort of outside of the programming question, but what app are you writing your Markdown in for your personal blog post and things like that? Do you have a favorite?
That's a good one. It kind of depends. Usually, for the most part, I just do it in PHP Storm because I tend to write very technical blog posts, and then I really appreciate having the full syntax highlighting of code blocks. If I do documentation, I do it within the project, so I can still reference files and make sure I get the syntax correctly and namespaces and stuff. So that's one favorite. If I want to do some light edits, I use VS Code. But sometimes if I just want to do something really quick, I use the GitHub Web UI. You can actually manage a whole Hyde project just from the GitHub webpage without needing to install anything locally, because you can just clone the template on GitHub and use actions
That's
to
interesting. Yeah.
run everything.
It's kind of cool because, like, so the Laravel news site, all of our posts are actually written in Markdown. But for me, I use an app called like IA Writer, and I don't know, it's just like a Markdown app, and for some reason it just doesn't click for me to go to PHP Storm or IA Writer or VS Code or any of those others. So it's I always find it interesting to find out what people are using for the different things that
Yeah.
we do.
And you can really use anyone, and you don't even need to use front matter if you don't want to, because you can specify some stuff in configuration files, and a lot of stuff Hyde can actually find. So if you don't set a page title, we'll try to find one from the first markdown heading and stuff like
Right.
that, or try to generate from the file name. So we try to discover a lot of stuff for you. So there's really not much boilerplate you need to do unless you want to do something that's out of the conventions. And that was one of my goals when designing this.
I love that. Yeah. So basically, yeah. So you're like first heading or your file name. I like
Yeah,
the trying to be smart and make it easier. That way you don't have to have all that front matter stuff that is
exactly.
probably duplicated anyway. Like most of the
Yeah,
time, um,
it really
I
is.
s- yeah, I was gonna say I assume most people don't even deal with that.
No.
What about like dates? I guess that comes from the file name too.
Um, in the next version of Hyde, we will support setting dates in the file names, and also ordering using numerical prefixes that would unstrip.
Hmm.
But for now, if you want the publish date, the default blog post system supports a lot of different formats. So you can just put in any string that is datetime compatible with string to time in PHP,
Hmm.
and we'll use that to formalize and parse and normalize the output date. If you want to do like when it was published and stuff like that.
Gotcha, gotcha. How are you? Brings me to another question. How are you handling like images in the blog post? Like, is that um, something fancy there you've got, or is that
Um,
uh,
Depends on what you think is fancy. I would like to think it's the dumbest way possible to do things. We have a media directory that is copied to the site output directory. So you can just reference in using relative paths, so just media slash whatever. And in front matter, you don't even need to specify the media because we'll find that automatically.
mm, nice, nice.
So yeah, just a dumb
Got,
way to do it, but it makes sense when you think about it. I want you to be able to visualize and understand implicitly where something is going to be saved and accessible through from the file structure.
right, right. That makes sense. Yeah, I'm, I keep going back because like our site, we end up pushing all the assets to S3 and then we use Cloudflare in front of that, which I honestly assume all that would actually because Laravel supports most of that stuff out of the box. Like because Laravel supports it, Hyde supports it.
Yeah,
Um, or at least you could tap in and do it if you really
you
wanted
could
to.
tap into it. We have a really powerful thing called build tasks, where you could potentially just use that to run some code during deploy and just sync to S3 or something. Sync your local media files. The idea with the media folder is that you can version control it, because it's optional if you want to version control the site output. I prefer not to version control that for a lot of projects, but you can if you want to, if you just want to deploy straight from there.
Right, right. Well, I guess my next question is more of like to go back in history, like why did you originally create this? Was it just sort of something that you wanted to scratch your own itch about, or just you just like this, like creating things like this?
Um, I think I had a few go arounds with doing different markdown based website generations for various stuff I needed. it started when I just wanted something quick for like privacy policy pages. I just rendered that from Markdown. Then I realized, well, I could render the about page from this too. So I started in a lot of Laravel apps, do very repeated logic and steps. So I first like made a package for things like that I used myself just to share. Then I thought, well, why do I even need to run a web server for these things? A lot of projects I don't feel like I need to do that. So that's where the idea was to build something more standalone. Usually when I hold talks about Hyde, I say, ever wanted to host the Laravel on GitHub pages? Now you can, because that's kind of what it feels like. And that's something I'm really happy about. But yeah, it
Yeah.
was just because I needed something myself, and I saw that others might be able to use this because it's such a simple way to get started and get a website. You can literally have a website out in less than 5 minutes because we ship with default, with bundled views, Tailwind, and Blade components for most things you need. So you can really get started quickly.
That's awesome. Well, what was the hardest thing about building it with, from the developer standpoint? Like, did you run into any like major problems or anything, or was it
Um, I think the hardest problem has not been developing, it has been maintaining it and maintaining a balance of all the cool stuff I want to do and then also being able to support it. If I build something just for myself, I can go crazy and do whatever I want. Here, I still need to consider I cannot break anyone's website. So I need to dedicate very much time to code quality, and I need to prioritize which features can I maintain, because right now I'm the only maintainer. Open source contributions are very welcome as always, but it's mainly just been me. So I really had to prioritize, and that I think has been the hardest to make sure. How can I deliver a quality experience when it's just me who's doing this in my free time?
right, right? Um, that's that. I feel like that's the worst case about publishing something. It's always fun to build it and publish it, but then
Yeah.
it's like, well, now I've got to manage this until the end of time. So it's
I mean, I
it's
don't mind
it's
managing it. This is something I've been working on for close to 3 years. Um, I was 3 years ago in May I started, and then I released it 1 year after, uh, and that is coming up on 2 years since then. And I still love working with it and contributing and developing it.
That's awesome. What about templates? Have you thought about like having a template system? Like, I mean, not a system, but like designs that like you could already like pre-install and use, or you're thinking more like people's already going to come with their own design stuff?
Yeah, that was one of the initial decisions that I thought about if I was going to support for V1. And I decided not to do it because I have, sadly, I have experience in WordPress. And I remember you find a theme that looks good, so you install it, and then you realize, wait, this won't work because it's missing critical features. But now it's too late. So I was thinking, if I'm going to offer either myself or others to install themes, I will want to make sure that they are quality. And I
Right.
can't really control if someone makes a bad theme and then someone gets upset that, well, now they can't really use their site because it didn't work out. So that's not something I've been wanting to support. So instead, it's just we ship with a quality starter theme, in my opinion,
Mhm.
that's pretty minimalistic and not too opinionated. So it works for most things. But you can customize it or you can swap it out. So if you want something more custom, I think just build your own blade views, or you can just pull in one of the Laravel UI kits or Laravel templates and do that. But I know there is a guy who recently made a package called, I think, Laravel theme Hide PHP layouts manager that in userland manages themes, and that's something I fully support. And since Hide is extensible, I think that's a great way for the community to offer things. It's just something I don't feel like I could guarantee a good experience for.
Right, right. No, that totally makes sense. And speaking of WordPress, I don't say I came from WordPress, but I used WordPress for many years on my personal site. And it was about like what you said. You would go find a theme and you're like, "Oh, this is going to be great." And then you install it and like the content don't match anything that I
Yeah,
already had. And it's like, "Well, I've just wasted 2 hours of my life trying to get this
yeah.
going." It's like it's supposed to be a simple install. But yeah, that does make perfect sense there.
Yeah, so that's really what I wanted to avoid with with that decision. Even though something that would be cool in theory, for sure.
Hmm. Yes, yes. So I guess outside of like, I keep thinking of like the use case being like a blog or just like articles, but I assume like you're having it probably with what documentation. It can kind of be used kind of all over the place, right?
Yeah, exactly. And a common thing people use it for is documentation. And it actually comes with a module that is designed for like making the documentation. So you just need to put your markdown files in the docs source directory, and Hide will use the template we have and populate a sidebar. It will generate a search index that works on the client side to search between the pages. It's responsive, has night and dark mode, night and day mode, just as all other pages. So it's really quick to get a documentation page. And if you have an API key from Torchlight by Aaron Francis, just drop it in the environments file, and Hide will automatically enable syntax highlighting, which I think is really neat.
Yeah, that one's that's sort of a little hidden feature of Laravel, the that editor or the Torchlight,
Yeah.
because this is sort of I'm going off the topic of Hyde, but I use Torchlight, and if you go into the docs, like you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. Like you
Yeah.
could have lines commented out. You can have uh, GitHub diff or like diffs. Basically, it's pretty cool
It's
if you've not
insane.
checked out that one. Yeah.
I also built for my code screenshots, I built a tool called Window Light that's a spin on Torchlight.
Mm.
So it lets you use Torchlight in the browser to generate code screenshots, and you can also use all of these diffs and cool stuff like that to make really cool code screenshots.
Ooh, that's awesome. So you need to send me that link. So and
Yeah,
we'll be sure and add it to the show notes because we're always sharing stuff on like Instagram, and you got to do pictures. So it's
yeah,
having many tools available. Like I've already I think I have 4 or 5 bookmarked now, and I just kind of rotate through whatever I'm trying to
yeah,
highlight that day or whatever's new in Laravel releases. So having another option would be sweet, and especially if
yeah,
it supports all that syntax highlighting, that'd
yeah.
be awesome.
And that was
Uh,
one of the things I also made for myself for a lot of screenshots for HydePHP actually. So I just made it available at the windowlight.thesilva.se, and I'll send you the link too.
Sweet. Yeah, that's awesome. So, to close out on High PHP, is there anything we missed that you want to highlight, or did we kind of cover most of the stuff about it?
I think we covered most things. So, I mean, there are tons of features like automatic navigation menus. You can use the default Laravel config. You can run stuff all from the cloud using YAML configs if you want to, website maps, RSS feeds, and yeah, just a bunch of stuff. But basically, it's Laravel on GitHub pages. You can do everything you're used to. So there's no learning curve for Laravel developers, and just easy and quick to get started with, and super. If you ever need to do more advanced stuff, the hide won't get in your way. It will give you the same tools as Laravel, so you can do really cool stuff.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, the definitely if you haven't checked it out, go check out Hide PHP. It's a cool little app, and especially if you're going to run a blog or documentation, anything static files, go check it
Yeah.
out for sure. Um, so what else you been working on? Anything fun and exciting? You got the code things. You got Hide PHP and anything else?
Well, I know you're going to talk about it next week with Jason, but a few months ago or last year, I paired up with Jason McCurry, the creator of Laravel Shift, and we made a new side project together called Release.new that generates release notes from your Git history. So that was really fun to work with a true Laravel legend. So that was awesome.
So so Release.new, so you said it creates a go ahead and give me the 2 minutes pitch on
Yeah.
Release.new. That way.
It doesn't need 2 minutes. Basically, it's a website. You're greeted with a form. You just paste in, currently we only support the GitHub, so paste in your GitHub URL and which version is the latest and the branch. And we will clone the repository and scan through the commit logs, and from that generate release notes. So you then get in a window on a single page, and there are a few checkboxes you can tinker around with to control the output. For example, do you want to link to the users who created it? Do you want to show the commit hash? We can even show, unlike the GitHub UI for releases, we can show just direct single commits and do the hashes or PR numbers. And we have categorizations that you can tick in and automatically put everything in categories like changed, added, and fixed and stuff like that. That was really fun to work on. I did a lot of the linguistic and semantic analysis to categorize that, which I loved doing.
That's awesome. So are you using AI behind the scenes too on that to help
No,
kind of summarize stuff or no?
we have thought about that's something we can offer, but right now the categorization is just linguistics, which because I enjoy working with that. So, and I thought it was a really cool thing.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, and I keep thinking of like, like Laravel, every time they come out with a release, they have, the whole
Yeah,
release notes of everything. So basically you don't have to, nobody has to go and manually do that anymore. You can just
exactly.
go use Release.new and it's taken care of.
Yeah,
It's done.
as long as you have the good commit names, which you should already do. We actually talked a bit to Dries, who used to manage the releases for Laravel, and got his input on it. And he said, "Well, if I still did releases, I would probably try this out." If I remember the quote correctly, it was Jason who told me that, so I hope I don't misquote him right now. But something to that effect, if memory serves.
Yeah, that's really cool. And me being Laravel News, like I could probably even use that for like packages and stuff that we cover.
Yeah,
The real popular ones when they come out with a new version, I could just stick it in there and get out change
yeah.
logs and stuff. That's
An API
a
is
lot of use cases.
something. Yeah, we've thought about adding like an API to automate it and stuff like that too.
That'll be super cool. Yes, and so this has already been launched or it's launching soon.
No, it's been launched a few months ago. I think we went live in the beginning of December
Hmm.
or November, might have been actually. So yeah,
Perfect, perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, yeah, we were talking behind before we started. Jason's going to come on next week because I've not interviewed him yet about Laravel Shift. So you can't have a creator series without Jason on at some point. So yeah, we're going to have him on to talk about that. Um, but yeah, so anything else that we should cover that we've missed?
not just made a lot of like random projects. So if you're interested, you can go to my personal website, thesilva.se, and go to the projects, and you will see I think about 20 random experiments I've made because I just really like doing stuff. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, that's awesome. And we'll definitely have show in the show notes. We'll have links to basically everything we've talked about here and all that. So man, I wanna say thank you for coming on and for spending this time with us, letting us know about HydePHP and Release.new and everything else.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor to be here.